First, we want to welcome Mr. Isaac, and who's currently serving, as I understand, as the director of Life-Powered National Initiatives of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Do you live in Texas?
Yes.
Where?
Just outside of Austin.
All right.
In the Hill Country.
All right. Welcome back to our committee, Mr. Isaac. We've, I think, seen you here before.
Yes, great to be back.
We're happy you're back, and you're well recognized and welcome to proceed with your statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman and members. I'm Jason Isaac, the Director of Life-Powered and National Initiative of the Texas Public Policy Foundation to Raise America's Energy IQ. From 2011 to 2019, I served in the Texas House of Representatives, and during my freshman session, carried the Texas Emission Reduction Plan legislation. I was the House sponsor for the ozone standards set by the EPA under the Clean Air Act. It's our state.
How often were you in the state legislature?
I was 8 years.
Okay.
Yes, 4 terms. That was our SIP that I carried, the State Implementation Plan. The EPA's National Emissions Inventory finds that mercury emissions from stationary sources in the U.S. fell 85% from 1990 to 2017, over 200 tons annually to about 30 tons annually. According to a 2018 UN study, 80% of the mercury deposited in North America comes from other continents, with half coming from Asia. A mercury deposition network already exists at the University of Wisconsin. The network consists of approximately 100 stations across the country and is supported by state, federal, and private funding. The mercury air toxics rule, which cost billions of dollars and resulted in the closure of many coal plants, increased electricity prices and reduced grid reliability in many areas. It was estimated originally by the EPA that there would be $90 billion in health benefits, but resulted in only $6 million in health benefits from reducing mercury emissions. Instead of repeating the narrative that we are dirty and setting impossible emission reduction goals for ourselves, we need to recognize our success, which you both have touted in our clean air here in the United States. We need to get the rest of the world to align with our air quality standards that improve human health. Until we do, our nation will continue to export jobs and import pollution. Regarding environmental justice, the real injustice, Americans' lack of access to affordable and reliable energy. This year, Americans will pay $5,200 more than last year to cover rising prices of gas, electricity, and everyday items. Even before the current energy crisis that Americans are facing, a lawsuit was filed in California that specifically addressed the issue. The plaintiff, more than 200 civil rights organizations, accuses the California Air Resources Board of being racially biased in its environmental regulations and environmental lobby organization. The evidence they present for this case is that the regulations they created primarily hurt minorities, while not doing anything to help the environment in California. The effects of clean energy policies have been catastrophic, as are the measures being taken by the federal government that ignore the science behind air quality and responsible energy practices. When it comes to air quality, we are a world leader. We have reduced the 6 criteria of pollutants that the EPA has the authority to regulate under the Clean Air Act by 78% in the past 5 decades, which both of you have touted. The message in the bill is clear. Environmental extremists want to say that the air in these communities is racist and unfair, but what matters more to Americans is not having to choose between food and electricity. The last bill on public health air quality refuses to acknowledge the monumental wins I've already mentioned, as well as the fact that we have the cleanest air of any country with over 50 million people. We should be celebrating our success, not spending more money to spread unnecessary climate alarmism. If we want to improve the lives of all Americans, then we should do so with our affordable, reliable energy from fossil fuels. Until the EPA demonstrates that it will end its war on American energy, Congress should not bless it with more funding. Environmental leadership and economic prosperity do go hand in hand. We cannot address injustice without monitoring, but we can with energy. To improve the global environment and eradicate poverty as we know it, we should produce and export our energy and our clean air around the world. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Isaac.
Emissions, including ground-level ozone, have fallen significantly over the past few decades, meaning our country has much cleaner air. But that has not stopped this administration from moving forward with plans to redesignate your area, the Permian Basin, as being in non-containment with the ozone standards. How would a finding of non-attainment with the ozone standard impact what goes on in the Permian Basin, and how do you interpret that, their interpretation?
Well, and their interpretation is wrong. The EPA non-attainment areas should be based on vehicular traffic, and they're looking at remote areas where there is no vehicular traffic. And you're looking at one of the largest areas of production for oil and gas in this country. And so it would be absolutely catastrophic to put the EPA in non-attainment. And that's why our Governor Abbott, has come out full throttled against this and will work diligently to make sure that this is not implemented over the Permian Basin, whether it's Texas or New Mexico. But that energy that we are producing is really providing the fuel for this country and the rest of the world. And quite honestly, we need to be increasing production. We need to get the financial industry off of the backs of the oil and gas companies and the fossil fuel producers in this country. We need to get them to quit discriminating against responsible American energy producers. We need to get the government to get out of the way and get off the backs of these responsible energy producers so that we can be helping people that are facing troubles in Sri Lanka and Germany and France and the Netherlands and Ghana and South Africa that are just being crushed by energy poverty because they've adopted these policies to decarbonize their governments, their countries, which does nothing to improve the environment, but does everything to increase the cost of energy. So it's just another assault on the oil and gas industry.
Thank you. We've heard that, and we've stated, both of us, and you all have as well, that the mercury levels have come way down over the last 20 to 30 years. Consistent with everybody's testimony is that the reason that we have any issues with this, I wouldn't say any, but issues with this, is because of what goes on in China. So I'm curious to know, does China monitor their mercury emissions? Mr. Eklund, do you know?
No, I don't know, but I would be surprised if they do.
Yeah,
I do know they have the pollution control technology. They just don't utilize it. And I have often said that there are, of all the technology the Chinese steal from us, it would be nice if they would utilize our pollution control technology. They don't. We're world leaders in clean air, and that impacts, as I said in our testimony, over 80% of the mercury deposits in the U.S. today come from foreign sources, and over half of that is from Asia.
Thank you.
Okay, Senator Sullivan, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You too. Mr. Isaac, Mr. Eklund, I want to follow on Mr. Isaac's discussions on the energy sector and the importance in terms of jobs, national security, economic security, prices at the pump. I couldn't agree with you more that this administration has undertaken a full assault on the sector. One thing, though, that never gets talked about, I'm from Alaska. I was the Commissioner of Natural Resources and Energy in Alaska. We have the highest environmental standards on production of any place in the world. In the world, by far. It's not even a close call. But that goes for America in general. I think Alaska is the highest. But can you just comment on that? Because a lot of people don't know that. So when we produce oil and gas in Texas and Alaska, New Mexico, by the way, New Mexico is just cranking. Deb Haaland, Martin Heinrich, their state, boy, do they crank on oil and gas. They get special treatment by the Biden administration. Almost half the federal permits issued by the Biden administration go to one state. Not Texas, not Alaska. They try to shut my state down every day. New Mexico. I think it'd be a great hearing to have. Why is New Mexico getting all this special treatment for oil and gas? Maybe it's the Secretary of Interior. Maybe it's the senior senator. But who knows? I'm digressing here because it's an issue I get a little hot and bothered about. But do we have higher standards than, say, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, Iran, where the president's going around begging for more oil production? Do we? And shouldn't that matter?
Absolutely, Senator. The National Energy Technology Lab issued a report. You could take natural gas produced in this country, You explore it, you produce it, you pipe it, you liquefy it, and then you put it on a ship and you transport it around the world, and you can get that gas to Europe and to India with greater than 40% fewer life cycle emissions than getting the same gas just piped from Russia.
From Russia,
So
40%.
you're absolutely right. Yes,
Yeah. And
greater than
18 times, Venezuela's 18 times higher in terms of pollution, including air, than U.S. energy production. Isn't that true as well?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
And we're world leaders in environmental protection.
But that never gets out, when they come after the energy sector. Oh, you guys are horrible. We're the leader in the world, aren't we?
Yes, we are. We absolutely should.
Let me show you another chart that's really important. I bring this out a lot. By the way, all the national media's fact-check this because they hate it, but it happens to be true, and even they have to admit it's true. So this is a chart of CO2 emissions since 2005, okay? That's the United States. We've reduced CO2 emissions by almost 15%, okay? There's China, there's India through the roof, okay? Why do you think that happened?
It's technology and it's environmental
Technology,
leadership.
and it's also the revolution in the production of natural gas in America, correct?
Yes.
Because it's clean burning relative to other sources. We moved off coal and we went to the production of natural gas.
I am glad you brought up CO2 because I'm ingesting higher concentrations than what's prevalent in the atmosphere, and I'm not spontaneously combusting.
Well,
so we can't demonize CO2. It's necessary for life on Earth.
But my point is, if other countries had the profile that we did, that we do, don't you think the global emissions problem we'd make significant if China and India had our profile, wouldn't that be good for global emissions around the world?
Oh, absolutely.
Does everybody, Mr. Uckland, do you agree with that?
I think that's pretty obvious, yes.
Mr. Isaac, the Texas Public Policy Foundation has received funding from the fossil fuel billionaire Koch operation, from ExxonMobil, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, Devon Energy, and other fossil fuel companies. Is that correct?
If that's public knowledge, I don't keep track of who our donors are, but I know that we're supported by over close to 10,000 people across the United States that believe in liberty, free enterprise, and personal responsibility and support our work.
Here's what TPPF's former vice president said about the organization producing industry-friendly research and advocacy in exchange for donations from industries that would financially benefit from the industry-friendly policies. The fundraising involved approaching corporations, wealthy businessmen, and corporate-funded foundations with a pitch described as, and I quote, "We think this is beneficial to your industry, and would you consider providing us with a nonprofit contribution? Here's the timeline for the completion of the research. The parameters of the research are this. We expect it will result in some savings or outsourcing," end quote. I'd like to put this article from the Texas Observer into the record without objection.
Without objection.
Mr. Isaac, in 2020, the most recent year for which we have your TPPF 990 form, TPPF reported receiving over $17 million in donations, correct?
That's correct. It's my
How
understanding.
much of that
as well.
comes from entities connected to the fossil fuel industry?
I'm not advised.
You really don't know that that funding comes from the fossil fuel industry?
I could say it comes 100% from people that benefit from fossil fuels.
Yeah, I bet they do. I'm assuming that you're a fan of and familiar with the economist Milton Friedman, the godfather of conservative libertarianism.
Yes.
In fact, TPPF honored Dr. Friedman at a commemorative event for the important role he played in promoting economic freedom in the United States, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And are you aware that Dr. Friedman supported pricing of emissions, pollution pricing, indeed said it was the best way to deal with pollution, and he considered pollution to be a market failure. Is that correct?
I'm not advised of his comments on pollution pricing.
Is this being the one area where TPPF doesn't follow Friedman principles related to the fossil fuel donors of TPPF?
I would say that we're proud of our American achievement in having the cleanest air on record, and we're world leaders in environmental protection.
We meaning
The foundation, actually, the foundation's absolutely proud of our country and the clean air that we have, the safest. We're number one when it comes to access to clean and safe drinking water. There's almost 1 billion people on the face of the earth that have no access to electricity.
Yeah,
we
keep trying to improve that, and industry keeps trying to oppose us, and you work for the industry. You cite a Bloomberg article in your testimony saying that the average household will pay $5,200 more a year because of inflation, much of it from gas price hikes by big oil, which sets gas prices. At the same time, the International Monetary Fund estimates that damages associated with fossil fuel combustion to people's health, property, lives, amounted to approximately $640 billion in 2020, which works out per household to almost exactly $5,200. And that hits those households every year, not just when inflation surges, correct?
Yeah, I believe those are referring to statistical lives, and that's flawed data, much like the UN IPCC climate
You
model.
disagree with that?
Yes.
How much is the Ike dike going to cost to protect the Texas coast from future hurricanes? Is it $31 billion?
I'm not sure the cost of the Ike Dike. The only levee that I'm aware of was built around Galveston
How much
Island.
is the how much is the damage from Hurricane Harvey? Is it $125 billion?
I'm not advised.
Are 91% of families in the Houston area with flood insurance policies projected to see their rates go up due to increasing extreme weather events like Hurricane Harvey?
I would say it's due to extreme insurance companies that are no longer making funds available to the fossil fuel industry or the timber industry in this country, as well as financial institutions
How
that are
does making
discriminating.
funds available to the fossil fuel
You're limiting
industry
access
relate to
insurance policies.
prime?
And limiting
Hold
access to
on.
capital.
Hear my question. This is home insurance I'm talking about.
Yes.
You're talking about business insurance.
Correct.
Okay, just want to be clear about that. I'd like to put the record into the record the article about the increased cost to Houston families from flooding.
Yeah, without objection.
In other states, Florida, average homeowners insurance premiums up 55% in the last 3 years, due largely to increased hurricanes and flooding. California, more than 350,000 home and business owners saw property and casualty policies dropped because of more frequent and severe wildfires. Cargill's executive director has stated that climate change could reduce grain yields in the U.S. by 14% by mid-century and 42% by late century. What effect on prices would a 42% reduction in Midwestern grain yields have, Mr. Isaac?
I think the key word is there, it could. And what we're seeing is climate is absolutely changing and man is having an impact on it. But over the last 100 years, we've seen a
And a
reduction
42%
in
reduction in
98%.
supply would have an effect on price, would it not?
Could.
Thank you. My time is
Being the
expired.
key word. Thanks, Senator.
Thank you very much.